In this series, the first thing that we talk about in detail, which we started with a Juma khutbah in Masjid Noor, and we talked about Ubudiyya in detail last night. Also, we had a more detailed discussion of that in Davis. It's sort of we're moving from place to place, continuing this series, and so we talked about this in detail. Just a brief recap. For what purpose have we been created in this world? And this is the dilemma of the century. And nobody seems to know that. Nobody even seems to care. Just enjoy 24/7, 365 entertainment and nonstop, and don't even think about it. Just enjoy. But really nobody's enjoying. The fact of the matter is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us to be the manifestation of His obedience. We are His slaves. He is our master. And He's not a tyrant master. He's the most beneficent, loving, caring, master. And He's given us our existence. He's given us everything. And so we should be grateful slaves, grateful to be a slave. Sayyidina Zayd radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he was the slave of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was given to Khadija, and then Khadija gave him to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ultimately, he emancipated and made him free. But actually, when his own father came and identified him, he said, I would rather stay here with my master. You would rather stay a slave of another human being and then go with your father back to your... But I have seen in my master what I have not seen in anyone. So that's Rasulullah. So what about those who are the slaves of Allah Jalla Jalaluhu? So it is a matter of great honor and dignity that we are the slave. It is the height of humiliation to be the slave of a creation. It's the height of honor and dignity to be slave of the Creator. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us all obedient slaves of the one who created us, sustains us, and to Him we return. So, a healthy body facilitates a life of Ubudiyya. A slave has to perform, right? And this life is for performance. And compete one another in performance. Sari'u, sabiqu, ila maghfiratin min rabbikum wa jannatin arduha samawati wal ard. Compete, vie. Not in the marketplace, for your positioning with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter. With salat and dhikr and talawat and good works and helping humanity and a whole life of action, activity, engagement. That requires health, vitality. So a healthy body is going to facilitate a life of ubudiyya, a life of servitude. If we're unhealthy, diabetic, heart disease, arthritis, mental issues, what kind of life of ubudiyya are we going to live? It's going to be extremely difficult, nigh impossible, to set about the task of performing the objective for which we've been created. So therefore, a healthy body is a matter of concern and attention in Islam. We realize that or not, and hopefully after this presentation, we will realize that. And so also, and this is critical, the body is not yours. It's an amanat. Have you heard this thing? It's my body. I do with it what I want. What do you think about that?
Nonsense.
Huh?
Nonsense.
Nonsense. Absolutely. Your body. Okay, wait a minute. Let's just look at this statement. Your body. Your body. This is, okay, did you create that body? You've got about 60 to 90 trillion cells in that body of yours. And now, that's pretty amazing, right? Well, what's more amazing than that, you have, for every cell, you've got about an equal number of atoms. So you've got, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 trillion atoms per cell, which you've got another, 60, 70, 80 trillion cells. Now, which of these cells or even atoms have you created? Or are you sustaining? Or controlling? Or have anything to do with them? Are you even cognizant of them? No. Again, whose body is it? The one who created it, the one who's sustaining it, the one to whom it will return. It is merely a trust in our hands at this point. And trust will have to be returned to its rightful owner. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ إِلَى أَهْلِهَا. Allah has ordered us to return the trusts to their rightful owners, and not in a decrepit condition, without maintenance and without, if you're given a company car, you don't service it, you don't change the oil, you put third-grade fuel in it, and you just basically, out of negligence, bring about its, depreciation and destruction, and you return that back to the company. Is the company going to be happy about that? Well, if they find out that that's the way you're dealing with the car, they'll probably fire you. So this is an amanat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this body of ours, and how are we treating it? How are we looking after it? So looking after our body is not like, it's for me, it's actually an amanat. And because Allah has given us as a loan to use this body for a life of servitude to Him, so if we're looking after that body and using this body for what it's been created for, then it's going to be a body of barakat and a means of felicity and happiness in this life and felicity in the hereafter. So the body is not yours, it's an amanat. It belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the body is an amazing ni'mah. Allahu Akbar. We had an exercise. One of the things that we do is we have an exercise, what we call exercise of tafakkur, thinking, pondering over Allah's qudrat and ni'mat and hikmat. And so the exercise is basically take any creation and just ponder over it. Try and see the qudrat and the hikmat, the power and the wisdom and the blessing that Allah's put in any particular thing, whatever. So one lady, in that she didn't go outside. Generally we go outside and we try and find things, and focus on them, and then they come back and they relate their experience. So one lady actually didn't go out because she was feeling cold, and I think she had maybe some health issue. So she sat there the whole time. But when I asked that, okay, who would like to share their experience, she did. She said, well, I couldn't go outside, it was too cold, but I just looked at my hand, and I just thought, look at this qudrat of Allah in my hand. It was amazing. And she said, and she didn't actually explain what she did, but she does some kind of technical work that required, maybe she's a surgeon or something, I don't know, whatever. And she said, I was looking at my hand and what Allah's qudrat is there, and the wisdom, He knows best, and what a ni'mah, and she just, we don't realize that. Suppose one joint goes out. One finger, the joint is the finger. How different life would actually be. This also interestingly says, every morning as the sun comes up, we owe Allah sadaqah on every joint of the body. 160. Basically, what that's saying is that every day we pay 360 joints worth of sadaqah. Suppose it was $1, that's $60 a day for some like us. Of us, it would be very difficult to do that. It is our gratitude. If you subhanallah, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, somebody smiling, somebody doesn't do their whatever. Offer that of it's going to place for everybody. If you think about it, that's all because everything's God, we reach in the body. Every joint is going to be used in a lot, and therefore every joint is being utilized to worship Allah. So anyway, the body is an amazing that requires shukr. Mashayikh, he says, من لم يشكر النعمة فقد تعرض لزوالها ومن شكرها فقد قيدها بإيقادها. He says that the person or someone who does not give the gratitude to a particular ni'mah, who is thankless of that particular ni'mah, the blessing, he has undertaken its elimination. In other words, he has set himself up to lose it. قَدْ تَعَرَّضَ لِزَوَالِهَا. He's set himself up to just lose that ni'mah. If you don't use it, you lose it. Or if you abuse it, you lose it. And in this case, if we're not grateful, that is a tremendous abuse. So you lose it. وَمَنْ شَكَّرَهَا فَقَدْ قَيَّدَهَا بِعِقَالِهَا. Allahu Akbar. And who actually offers the gratitude that is due, so he has tied that ni'mat with its iqal. Iqal in Arabic, you would have seen that, the Arabs, they wear that thing, on their head, which it's very interesting because actually that is it's not the dress of the nobles of the Arabs. The nobles used to wear an imama. Nabi alayhi salatu wore an imama, he didn't wear iqal. That was the dress, and it's a functional dress for the Ahl al-Badiyah, for the Bedouin, because he's in camels, with his camels, he's in the desert, and so what he does, this iqal is actually for his camels, it's not for him. He just keeps it on his head to have it ready. It's kind of So what he does is, he takes off the iqal, which is a circular rope, and he ties it, he turns it into a V8. And he puts one of the hoops, the loops, on the one ankle of the camel, and he puts the other one on the other, ankle of the camel. And so now the camel cannot get away from its master. It can move around, it can graze, but it can't escape its master. It can't run away. And interestingly, we have what we call aql. Aql, this iqal, it comes from that. So aql is also supposed to keep us under control so that we don't run away from our master. So I think we've probably gotten out of it, most of us. So anyway, so he's giving the simile that the person who has done the shukr of his ni'mat, he has tied up that ni'mat like the Bedouin would tie up his camel with his iqal, So it's not going to get away, it's going to stay with him. So that's the thing. So the body is an amazing ni'mat and it requires shukr. Okay, so who is more fit is more able to do righteous works. It's just logic, right? And therefore please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to higher levels. So therefore we are concerned about our health, physical health. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exhorts us to compete. Not only that, not to compete in the market for money and profits, but rather to compete for the favors with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sabiqu, sariyu, race, hasten, And interestingly, looking at this racing, usually in competition, you will have between competitors animosity. That's why in business they say now, eliminate your competition, right? And sometimes it gets to become literal. Yeah, if you get really serious and you're really pushing a powerful capitalistic structure and you're getting in the way, you may actually literally be eliminated. That happens quite often. But, so if we look at that and competition for rizq, are you competing with somebody for your rizq, or is that decided? It's decided. So where's the competition? There's no competition anyway. We're competing for our market share. You're going to get what you've been ordained to. Relax. Don't get bent out of shape, about what you shouldn't be bent out of shape. Just get in shape, and just go through the mechanics. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is said, go and seek the rizq which I've ordained for you. So, فَأَجْمِلُوا وَأَجْمِلُوا فِي الطَّلَبِ, just take it easy, relax, go through the process, and what is ordained for you, you'll get it. This is one of the things that attracted me to Islam. That Muslims they didn't explain this to me, they showed it to me. I was in Morocco, okay? And this health thing is actually, we inherited this from my mother. Allah give her hidayah. She's in her mid-90s and she's still sharp as a pin, but she's not going to stay forever. And she's not yet, hasn't realized that she's a Muslim. But with your du'as, hopefully she ultimately will. It's been 50 years since I'm working on her, but she's an amazing person. Anyway, So, but from the very beginning, we always, lived a very healthy life because she's an organic gardener. We always used to live off the land and healthy stuff and all that. So, anyway, so when I got to Morocco, I wanted dates because I eat dates every day. I need to eat dates every day. So I went to the date market in Morocco. And amazingly, I found that all the date sellers, it seemed in Marrakesh, they're all in one place, which doesn't make business sense, right? Everybody's selling the same thing, the same price, more or less, and the same place. So, I mean, how can everybody, that doesn't make any sense at all. Why don't you guys spread out? So I thought, these poor guys, they don't know much about business, so I'm from America, I know about business a bit. So I'm going to really help them out. I'm going to do them a favor, and I'm going to explain something that they really help them out. So I went to one of them and I said, look, this doesn't really make good sense that you're all sitting here together. Marrakesh is a big place. Why don't some find different places where there's no date sellers? There's no shop there, and you'll get that niche. Isn't that a good idea? And the guy just looked at me and laughed. Like, okay, Sonny, you sit down. They're like a little kid, 4 or 5 years old, says, Uncle, I got this great idea. Oh, that's great, Sonny. Take it easy. He said, look. He said, if we spread out all over the world, or we all sit here together, whatever God has appointed for us, we're going to get it. I just looked at this guy and said, wow. Coming from the 1960s hippie background, that I come from, I said, this guy is more hip than all of us. Because that was the concept, the hippies, what was that? These were people who were trying to identify or sort of connect with their fitrah. Probably a lot of us who didn't know about all of that things, wouldn't realize, these are just weirdos that, But actually, it was an expression of people who are responding now to their nature, to fitrah, which took us, many of us, it sent us on the path, and ultimately some of us accepted Islam. So, when I heard this, I said, look at this, this concept. How many of you have heard of corporate stress? Everybody, right? It's a reality. Everybody's stressed out. Why? Because they don't have Iman and Qadr. That's 99.999% of the problem. Relax. You're going to get what you're going to get. Okay, you didn't make it this year. Look next year. And anyway, life is short. You're going to go into the next world. Relax. Take it easy. Right? So this poor fellow, in the date market is light years ahead of our, of Harvard Business School, which is teaching you how to compete with your, eliminate your competition. You're not competing, it's in your head. If you want to now, on the other hand, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a competitive spirit. And there's a reason for that, because we're supposed to be hastening and competing for a Jannat which is as expansive as the heavens and the earth, which is prepared for the people of taqwa. And the beautiful thing about this competition, this is a competition without jealousy. It's a competition without enmity. Nobody's going to eliminate anybody. Everybody's moving towards the same objective and praying for the success of everyone. So when in this competition we see somebody getting ahead of us in their, in their journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we say, MashaAllah, la quwwata illa billah. Allah bless him and give him or her more tawfiq, and Allah give me tawfiq to do as well. This is Islamic competition for real gains. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put this in us, and we are to compete. And to compete, you're gonna have to be healthy. We're going to have to be healthy spiritually, physically, in all dimensions to be able to do that. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves the muhsin. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Inna Allah ma'alladina taqaw walladina hum muhsinun. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is with the people of taqwa and ihsan, the people who do things with excellence, the best they possibly can. And so, to have excellence is going to require vitality, strength. It's not possible for the weak, sick, occupied in trivial and useless stuff, mala yani. Right? And so therefore, Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, tells us that Inna Allah yuhib ma'ali al-amur wa yakrahu safasifaha. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves the noble endeavors and objectives. And He dislikes the trivial. All day long in Facebook and WhatsApp and who did this and who said that and who wore that and who ate that and who traveled here and who... Come on, really? Is that what we're created for? One of our pious ancestors, he was the son of a king, and he used to love hunting. So he was on his horse and he was chasing after a rabbit. And all of a sudden a voice said to him, "Alihada khuliqt?" Have you been created for this? To run after rabbits? Come on. So what's this? He took off again, and again this voice, and then ultimately, So then you realize, no, I haven't been created for this. I've been created for something else. And it was actually the change in his life. Very interesting story. Anyway, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us for the most noble of portfolios, to be His vice regents on the earth, to represent His deen, His obedience on the earth. And we're busy in all of this, foolishness. It doesn't behoove us at all. But most of us are oblivious to that. We don't realize. Min husni Islam al-mar tarkuhu ma la ya'ni. Part of the perfection of one's Islam is shunning that which does not concern him. We're watching the news quite a lot. What's happening here? Do we have any influence in those activities? Are they impacting us? What we do have influence in, we should be putting our focus there. What we're involved in, what we have influence in, what is impacting us, there we were. But we're looking all over everything except what really concerns us. So a beautiful quality of Islam is to leave that which does not concern you. So in other words, involve ourselves in what concerns us. And what concerns us is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's obedience and preparing ourselves for the eventuality that is the only certainty of life, which is death. So preparing for that day is what should be concerning us. Okay, so importance of physical health from the Quran and Sunnah. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ أَن تُؤَدُّوا الْأَمَانَاتِ إِلَىٰ أَهْلِهَا. And we mentioned this already, and we'll just reiterate. Indeed, Allah commands you to deliver trust back to their owners. And we've already discussed that. This is a trust, we have to deliver back to the owners, and we're supposed to deliver it back to the owner in the condition that we received it, which was at birth perfect. Perfection as per Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's desire for that particular human being. So we should hand it back as it was or better, right? وَلَا تُلْقُوا بِأَيْدِيكُمْ إِلَى التَّهْلُكَةِ. Now this is a overriding umbrella, principle. Do not make your own hands contribute. In other words, don't destroy yourselves with your own hands, knowingly. Okay, when I was a kid, we used to hear this: if you don't smoke Marlboro, you're not a man. So everybody thought, okay, you're supposed to do that. If not, you're not a real man. Then, when I was a teenager, I used to hear this, that smoking may be hazardous for health. Maybe. So probably it is, otherwise they wouldn't write it there, right? So that means this is not something we should be involved in. So Islamically speaking, are we destroying ourselves? It's very likely. So what would we want to do? Allah says, don't destroy yourselves. So what do we have to do? Don't do it. That's pretty clear. Then then the next stage was, cigarette smoking is hazardous to your health. Now it's pretty serious. Now, smoking kills. Okay, we're going to kill ourselves? So what does that mean? Allah says, don't kill yourself. He said, no, I'm going to kill myself. It's no problem. So obviously this is the height of ingratitude and a very serious, and this is not, I'm just giving an example, but we know there's many things that are very destructive to our health, and yet we laugh it off. This is bad for me. Yeah, it's bad for me. It's not a joke. It's serious. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't destroy yourselves. So therefore, you will also see, as a matter of fact, in terms of eating, that he's going to order us to eat halal tayyib. And we'll talk about this a little later. In hadith, another general principle, Nabi alayhi salatu says, Al-mu'min al-qawi khayrun wa ahabbu ila Allahi min al-mu'min al-dha'if wa fi kullin khayr. Ihras ala ma yanfa'uk. Wasta'in billah wa la ta'jiz. It's a long hadith, but this is the part that concerns us here. A strong believer is better and dearer to Allah than a weak one. Although both are good because both have iman, but one who is stronger. Now, we need to look at what is meant by stronger. Stronger what? This mu'min can lift 50 pounds, this one can lift 500 pounds. Is that what's meant? So what's meant? Huh? Stronger in iman, stronger in taqwa, stronger in his love of Allah, and every kind of strength, and physical strength as well. He'll be more, with his iman and taqwa and love of Allah and love of paradise, he will be more productive in all types of good works as well. So physical strength, intellectual strength, right? Strength of determination, which is very critical. Al-azam. Fida azamta, fatawakkal Allah. Without azam, there's no tawakkul even, right? So, in every way, shape, or form where there's strength, a praiseworthy form of strength, every type of praiseworthy strength is commendable in Islam. And that's what we can deduce. This is what the ulama have explained to us. Okay? And then, adhere to which is beneficial for you. So in terms of our physical health, what's beneficial for our physical health, adhere to it. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam orders us to do so. Which means that whatever is not beneficial for you, leave it. Abstain from it. Adhere what benefits you. So what about that which is harmful to you? Stay far away from it. The order of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And keep asking Allah for help. Wasta'in billah wa la ta'jiz. Don't become incapable, feeble, ajiz. I can't do it. It's too much. No. Have determination, and know that if you determine something which is praiseworthy, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there to help you as well. Even though it may seem, overbearing and formidable to accomplish, but with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's tawfiq, everything is possible. Sahih Muslim. So first we're going to start with exercise, movement. Particularly because in this particular day and age, there's no movement anyway. We don't move. We sit behind these screens most of our life. And as a result, you'll see that modern science and medicine is telling us that sitting is killing more people than cancer. Because of the outcome, because all these things are coming out of this immobile lifestyle. Everything is falling apart. So, and we just mentioned, with 360 joints, does that point to what? I mean, the engineer of this human body, the objective was what? Sitting? 300 joints points to a body which is engineered for movement. And this is exactly how human beings used to this was their life. They were in movement. If you look at the life of Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, there's a lot of movement. Half of the night, 3/4 of the night, 1/3 of the night, movement in salat. Then walking to the masjid, whoever is around from farther, and the farther you walk, the more ajr you get. After salat, there's a problem, there's a dispute, there's something. So Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, with his companion, would walk to those places and walk here and walk there, and then they would go in the path of Allah and go in jihad, and they would ride on the camels. I don't know if anybody's ridden on a camel, but it's hard work. It's not like riding in your Mercedes. You have to move with the flow of that camel, Allahu Akbar. And see the strength that they had. They would, in the battlefield, today everybody sits behind a wall and presses buttons or pulls triggers, and that's pretty much it.
In those days, it was a men's war. You know, a man would go out there with a sword and he would swing that sword all day long. We wouldn't last 5 minutes in that. The women were much stronger than us. Asma bint Abi Umais, the wife of Abu Bakr, the last wife of Abu Bakr, who was the mother of Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr. So she actually had that child. Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr was born in Hajj, on the journey for Hajj. They had just left Medina. They got down at the miqat, and she had the baby. He said, okay, carry on. Got back on the camel with the newborn baby and traveled on the camel for another 10 days, 2 weeks, whatever it was, to Makkah, performed Hajj, Tawaf, you know, Sa'i and Arafat and the whole Hajj, and rides back on the camel, and no big deal. Because in those days it wasn't a big deal. That was part of life. They were strong, they were healthy, they lived a natural, movement-oriented life. Very simple and very blessed as well, but it's not that they were the only humans on the planet like that. I mean, that's the way human beings were until very recently. So our industrial age has really brought, I think, more onus than bonus. You know, if you really look at it and analyze, you know. Anyway, so exercise and movement is something that we need to think about. Battery is running low, so therefore, can we put that in here? Okay, Aqwal al-Ulama. Now we looked at it from Ibn Nawawi, Imam Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, rahmatullahi alayhi. He says a very amazing thing. This is quite long, so I don't know if we can really go through all of this, but it's very technical stuff. He was had amazing insight, but we'll just go through it. If whatever we can pick up from it, well and good. But it's just try and focus really carefully, because what he's saying is pretty profound. He says the waste left behind after food is utilized becomes toxic and detrimental. I think we can understand that. If remaining longer than its natural time frame. In other words, you get constipated, it's going to be bad news. It becomes toxins and poisons, and it's really going to cause a lot of travail. If forced out by medication, you know, laxatives, the body suffers both from the ill effects of the medication, as most are toxic, poisonous. Now that's when laxatives were herbs or natural substances. What about today? Dr. Saab, you could tell us more about that, right? It's not a good thing. So if you want to force it out by medication, that's not good. While the benefits of the food are also excreted. You're forcing it out and the nutrients are being lost. And so along with the harm, the body suffers from the process. So it's a bad situation all the way around. Movement, on the other hand, is the strongest means to prevent the buildup of waste, prevent heating of the organs. I mean, these guys, keep in mind, 600-700 years ago, right? Dissolves wastes, revives the body's agility, increases vigor and energy, renders the body more susceptible to nourishment. You know, they say now, it's not what you eat, but it's what you absorb. You know, you're eating all this good stuff, but your system is so out of whack, it can't absorb it and utilize the good nutrients that you're feeding it. So movement is also helping in this process. It firms the joints, it strengthens the sinews, the tendons, ligaments, all that other connective tissues, beside the muscles or beside the bones themselves, protecting against all physical and most temperamental diseases. Now they say yes, because why? Because exercise boosts up the immune system amazingly. And once your immune system, that's why black seed is a cure for everything except death. Why? Because it's such a strong immune system builder. So anything that comes along, your immune system can deal with it. The way we are, anything that comes, we're knocked out, Little COVID comes and the whole world is on its back. Right? Why? Because we're out of whack. We're out of sync. Right? So if applied in moderation, in other words, movement, exercise, now look at this. If applied in moderation at its appropriate time, along with the appropriateness of other lifestyle measures. Somebody thought that this is the past couple of decades, lifestyle and all this Our ulama were talking about this centuries ago. So appropriate time after the complete digestion of nourishment, moderate exercise, that which induces the reddening of the skin and causes the body to moisten with sweat. You got these guys with the sweat pouring out. You're taxing your body. This is unnatural. This is ultimately going to be detrimental, not beneficial for you. That's why you find these guys with these huge, big muscles, bodybuilders. After a while, they're going to be in trouble. It's not going to serve them. It's going to actually be a problem for them later on in life. Okay, exercise that causes profuse sweating is excessive. It should be avoided. So if we reflect on the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we will find it the perfect guide for protecting health and strength, befitting in both the worlds. So where do we get our exercise? Where did Rasulullah get his exercise? In salat. The most beneficial thing for health of the body, as-salat khayrul wudu', best thing that we can engage in every dimension. Dissolving detrimental compounds. And he's talking about this, not leave alone the spiritual and all the actual main objectives from a health standpoint. The salat that we perform, if it's a real salat, it also has these benefits, and they identified this centuries ago. Dissolving detrimental compounds and waste, protecting iman and the success of the world and the next. Best of everything. Tahajjud, Allahu Akbar, among the most beneficial means of protecting one's health, preventing chronic diseases. If you find somebody that's consistent in tahajjud, you won't find a person that's got all these chronic diseases, generally speaking. Unless he's really doing some really radical wrong stuff otherwise. Preventing chronic diseases and energizing the body, soul, and heart. That's quite a big difference than hanging out at the gym and lifting weights and, Right across from our masjid, we have 3 gyms. In Tustin, my masjid there in SoCal. 3 gyms. We're offering Salatul Fajr, and they got this, heavy metal music blasting, and they're running around the block half naked. And so they're also exercising, and we're also exercising. By the tawfiq of Allah, I'm hoping, if Allah accepts it, our exercise is much more beneficial. Both are putting in the time, both are putting in an effort, but what is the outcome? Okay, and then of course, on what pattern are we following? So tahajjud, subhanAllah, Allah give us all tawfiq to be people consistent. And this was a salient feature of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What's happened here? His involvement in tahajjud, 2/3 of the night, half of the night, 1/3 of the night. Okay. Shaitan, and this is also mentioned, Shaitan ties 3 knots on the nape of one's head during his sleep, imprinting in each knot. He actually blows. You have a long night ahead of you. Sleep. So if he wakes up, he remembers Allah, and one of the knots unties. If he performs wudu, a second knot unties. And if he performs salat, all the knots unravel, and he faces the day invigorated. Invigorated in excellent spirit. Allahu Akbar. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq. So this is Rabbani exercise, right? Shari Som, fasting. It's a tremendous exercise for us. Tremendous cleansing of the body, even though that's not the main objective is exercising control over our lower desires, which is destroying us. This is critical. Hajj itself, Allahu Akbar. And previously, people would either walk in Hajj. When I lived in Makkah, we used to walk in Hajj. We used to walk from Makkah to Mina, from Mina to Arafat, from Arafat back. Subhanallah. And that's how people used to do it. And people were able to do that. And they would walk. They would walk through all of these things. And subhanallah, and people were in good shape. And they weren't suffering from all of these diseases. Jihad, Allahu Akbar, comprises total movement, obviously. Of course, we're talking about the jihad that they used to perform, men's warfare, not this, wara al-judar. So, jihad comprises total movement, and among the paramount means of strength, protection of health, firmness of heart and body, repellent of wastes, remover of anxiety and grief. wait a minute, jihad, you're going into the thick of a battle that should be, no, because your thiqah is with Allah and you're seeing the nusr of Allah, Allah, ilaha illallah. The whole thing, it's totally the opposite of what you would imagine, because you're fulfilling a sublime and a very magnificent order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which brings about the life of deen, in its totality. SubhanAllah. Competition. Also, Nabi Sallallahu had competitions in horse riding, archery, running. He used to run with Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, as you all know. Sometimes he'd let her win, and sometimes he would actually win. Obviously, he had the strength of 40 men. So all of these things, walking and fulfilling one's own or his brother's needs and rights, visiting the sick, joining the funeral processions, walking to the mosque. They were walking 10,000 steps a day. That was kid stuff. They were walking all day long, Allahu Akbar. And even the movement in wudu and ghusl is also movements, and they're movements connected to spiritually divine connected, actions. So not only they are simply a movement, but they're a spiritual exercise as well. So the protection of health and excretion of wastes found in these activities is the least of their benefits, which people are now spending their whole lives and objectives to locate these benefits. However, what they contain for the attainment of the goodness of the world in the hereafter is something far beyond that. That's what it's actually about. But you get all these fringe benefits as well. In any case, so you can see that our ulama, they were concerned about health, and they wrote amazingly. And in fact, the basis of modern health or modern medicine was actually, the development by Muslim scientists and physicians, who all of them were ulama. Did you know that there was never a scientist in the Islamic tradition that wasn't an alim? But that was just a branch of ilm. And of course, it was an offshoot of the divinely inspired disciplines. Every scientist, every Muslim scientist was an alim of Quran and Hadith and fiqh and aqidah and scholar in Arabic language, and along with that, these branches which stemmed from guidance or indications from the Quran and Sunnah. So Allah would put an interest in these particular fields, and they would excel. And so it's not that they came up with medicine or astronomy or chemistry or mathematics, but they took all of those disciplines to a level that human beings had never seen, which was the basis of now modern sciences and disciplines. However, extracting this whole spiritual dimension, so it's left as a physical structure bereft of soul and spirit. So we have a materialistic, capitalistic, nothingness in the world today. Before, we had a beautiful culture of a mix of the best of the physical world, inspired by the divine and the spiritual, undertones of civilization. There was a huge difference. That was human civilization. This is mechanical civilization that we live in today. So the world needs us to return to these things and show the human beings how to be human beings once again. Are you all ready for that, inshallah? May Allah give us all tawfiq. So, any limb required in exercise strengthens. Moreover, all faculties respond likewise. If we use it, it develops. If we don't use it, then ultimately we lose it. So, even your memory. One of the things that they've discovered is that one of the reasons why we have all these different forms of dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, because people don't use their minds anymore. I mentioned about my parents. Both of my parents are still alive, although they're not Muslims, but they are intellectually active. My father still writes books and poetry, and he's 90-some years old, His body is deteriorating, but the mind, So if you use your mind, it's like a knife. You keep it sharp, it'll serve you. If you don't, it gets dull, and then ultimately it decays and it's useless. So all of our limbs, if we're not using them, they ultimately they decay, they deteriorate, and they become useless. And even the mental faculties are the same. So one who frequently reflects, contemplates, thinks about Allah's qudrat and His ni'mat we were talking about earlier, so that power also develops. All of these things. Likewise, every limb faculty has its own designated exercise for the chest. And then he talks about all of these different exercises. It's mind-boggling, actually, what he's saying. You know, the chest, recitation of Quran. You know, to really recite Quran well, you know, you need to take deep breathing. You know, now they're talking about deep breathing, but we're taking deep breathing to breathe the kalam of Allah. Allahu Akbar. So imagine, from the physical standpoint and then from the spiritual, what fantastic, you know, divine, you know, based health you're going to get out of that. Hearing, listening to the sounds and voices incrementally from eyes. It's even listening. Our ulama, how they saw things, listening to the sounds of things. Listening. How many of us have actually in the morning gone out and just listened to creation? Birds are doing tasbih. The wind is blowing, you know. SubhanAllah. We're listening to our, you know, we got our phones and we got our gadgets and we're just oblivious to all of this beauty that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created around us. Listening to the recitation of Quran, listening to the dhikr of Allah, the speech of the wise. You know, Allah. And the more we will listen and pay attention, the more that faculty is also going to develop. Okay? For the tongue as well. If we actually, you know, speak truth and we speak haqq and we want to remember Allah and talk about Allah and invite to Allah, and so that capacity also will develop with exercise. Okay? Eyes, similarly. You know, one of the things that we do, we don't use our eyes to look in distance. Now, when I was as a student in Makkah, my children were all in hifz of Quran, and they were all getting, you know, these huge numbers, you know. They're getting this severe nearsightedness. I couldn't figure it out. They're reading Quran all day. I mean, what's the problem? The problem is that the eyes have not been exercised to look at distance. They're looking at 6 inches away all day long. So if you're looking 6 inches away from you all day long and all night long, your eyes are going to work at 6 inches, not at 600 feet or, you know, a mile's distance. So, and then I saw some studies on this, and so actually we should exercise our eyes. So those of our mashayikh and teachers of Quran and whatnot, this is a very critical point. So if our kids are learning and they're studying Quran, have them every so often, take them outside and have them focus on something as far as they can look. You know, 5-10 minutes, just exercise looking into the distance, so that, you know, and this will go along. That's why you'll find the people, the Bedu, they're famous for this, you know, it's like they have telescopic vision, you know? And anybody who's been with Ahl al-Badiya, they'll know this, you know, they're proverbial. Why? Because they're always looking in this horizon, which is like miles away, looking for a game and looking for their camels or whatever, or their enemies in the old days or whatever. So, all of these things, if we exercise it, the legs for walking, obviously, you know, incrementally from you know, moderate and then working up and all of these areas. So and then he mentions all of these: horse riding, archery, wrestling, racing on foot, roots out chronic diseases. Now how they, you know, they understood this back in those days. And for the nafs, exercising of the nafs, education, good manners, joy, patience, steadfastness, courage, exercising. These are exercises in all of these qualities: generosity, works of righteousness, and love. These are the exercise of nafs, to strengthen the nafs in the proper way, in the Rabbani way. As one continues to exercise these traits, they eventually become deep-rooted attributes and firmly grounded faculties. Allah give us all tawfiq. So, you now must realize that Rasulullah's guiding example is far above any other in the treatment of body and soul, protection of the health, warding off their sicknesses. And tawfiq is by Allah. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. You have the best example in the life of Rasulullah. In what? In everything. And among that everything is exercise and physical health. So, how much time do we have left, by the way? Huh? 40 minutes. Okay, so there's a lot we can say about exercise, and these are just kind of bullets of benefits that coupling with what we've already heard and what now modern conventional science has also discovered. So these are some of the main benefits of exercise. Strengthens cardiovascular systems, heart, lungs, regulates body fuel, lowers the need for insulin in handling blood sugar. Very critical. One of the major dilemmas is this diabetes, which is like spreading like wildfire. And it's because one of the main reasons is because exercise, no exercise. We're not burning up the calories, we're not burning up the glucose. Reduces obesity, burns up calories, reduces appetite. That's very interesting. You would think you're exercising, you're going to get more hungry. Actually, it's the other way around. And you just try this. You know, after a workout, you really don't feel like eating a lot. But if you're sitting around at home, you feel like eating a lot. As a matter of fact, you never get satisfied, right? Munching, munching, munching. And that continuous munching is the biggest, enemy for our health. That's what's killing us. This is the main reason of diabetes, perhaps. And what we're munching on is usually, pure junk, full of glucose and full of, and so the insulin never stops. Because the insulin is needed to deliver the glucose to the cells, and you're always giving it. And there's going to come a time when the cells are going to say, "Wait a minute, we had enough. We can't accommodate anymore." It's like your ports here in Long Beach and Los Angeles, So the glucose is piling up, and the cells say, "We can't take it. You have to take it. We're not taking it. You have to. We're going to go on strike." Diabetes, type 2 diabetes, khalas. Okay, now if we resolve the conflict. So this is easily resolved. All type, doctors can correct me, but I'm quite sure that this is the fact. All type 2 diabetes is treatable. And studies have been undertaken where, for example, 500 patients, within 40 days of controlled diet, they're all out of diabetic situation. So if we'll just pay attention to these things, we can alleviate a lot of this travail that doesn't need to be there. So exercise elevates the stress threshold as well. If you're exercising, that gives you this vitality, gives you this energy, and you can take stress and tension more. Really, it's a fact. Now what? Okay, lifts the mood. I think everybody's experienced that. If you're feeling down, you're feeling depressed, go and walk. Take a brisk walk outside in the nature and look at all this one. It'll go in a minute, inshallah. Lifts the mood, boosts the immune system. We already talked about that. Boost energy and production of body and brain. Most important, it's the means to attain higher levels of amal salih, because all these components are going to help us in doing good stuff, right? The risk of physical inactivity, diabetes, we don't exercise, then what happens? Look for diabetes, weight gain, anxiety, depression, joint and bone fragility, circulation system problems, increased risk of various cancers, many common chronic diseases, heart disease, high blood pressure, inactivity, killing as many as smoking. Dr. Stephen Blair says, well-known modern guys out there, a bit controversial as well, but I think he hit right on this one. He says low fitness stood out higher than obesity, smoking, diabetes, high cholesterol, and high blood pressure. Low fitness is the strongest risk of death. In other words, low fitness stood out higher than all of these factors for mortality. Obviously, we know we're going to die when our time is up, but there's a manifestation. There's a certain asbab that we look for. So, if you find somebody that's like that, then apparently their time is drawing near, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us from that. So exercise, what do? There's different types of exercise. Warm-ups, there's strength exercises, cardios, there's stretches, there's internal energy exercises, which the Chinese, they developed long ago, and now we're just kind of catching up with that kind of stuff. And posture exercises, how we're all sitting. Sitting in chairs is really bad for you. Sitting up, sitting up straight. When we were kids in school, our teacher used to come back and whack us. if we weren't sitting up straight. And now everybody's, you know, in Pakistan, everybody's got a slunched back. They all got hunchback, but they're all sitting over like this, you know. So all of these things. So what you need to do is, you know, come up with sort of a mix of these things. When we have time, when we do this in a retreat form, then we do some of these things, and we actually come up with a plan. You know, how much rest. Also, rest is critical. It's not just exercise, but resting properly, proper sleep, getting your, you know, quality sleep. Did you know that an hour of sleep between around 9, 10 o'clock up until midnight, or maybe up to 1 o'clock, the early part of the night, it will equal 3 hours of after that. Usually people are going to sleep now, 11, 12, 1 o'clock, and they sleep all day long and they wake up groggy. They were probably worse off than when they started. Whereas the prophetic example, Nabi Sallallahu used to sleep. كان يكره النوم قبلها والحديث بعدها أي صلاة العشاء. After Salat al-Isha, Nabi Sallallahu didn't want to get involved in anything. Sleep, get up early. Half of the middle of the night, he's up. Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what does that mean? It means 34 hours of the quality sleep is sufficient. And then, just before Fajr, he would also, about 1/6 of the night, he would also sleep. And there's a fantastic barakat in that time. Also, qaylula, little rest in the midday, either before dhuhr or just after dhuhr. You know, we have a thing called the 11 o'clock slump. I think we all know that. And that usually translates into coffee time, right? So rather than obeying, you know, the demand of the body at the time, we throw caffeine out and say, forget about it. No way. You're going to work. You know, you're going to keep on grinding, which is obviously causing problems, you know. So if we'll follow the prophetic advice, and we'll see that Nabi Sallallahu had such a fantastically productive life, no human being has produced the like of it. But if you actually study his life, his activities, they were very organic, they were very natural. You don't see a person who's stressed out, you know, at 10:01 we're doing this, and 10:13.3 seconds we're into this, and then we're, you know. Get up for tahajjud, rest before Salat al-Dhuhr, go to the Salat, after Salat, dhikrullah, talk to his companions. There's an issue or anywhere, they would walk, sort out that issue, any problem, dispute between people. There was a funeral, they would do it, bury it. And Salat al-Dhuhr, there would be maybe a little discourse if necessary, a little rest, and then Asr. And look what transpired. The whole world was transformed by this natural, beautiful, simple life, full of barakah and full of, you know, impact. And it was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who did it, you know, but through this medium. So if we'll adopt this lifestyle, then we'll see amazing things happening, inshallah. Allah give us all tawfiq. So anyway, generally what we do is we have enough time. So what we'll do is we'll kind of assess what we're doing as is and what we would like to see happening. So we map out our activity during the day, and then we actually see, hey, I'm just doing nothing. So I need to, you know, look at this guy. I don't know if you can see that. This guy is doing his work and he's on a treadmill. Have you seen that? So he's standing up. By the way, since we're all of us, myself included, we are behind these screens for quite a long time, it would behoove us to get up and move around every now and again. Stand up. So I've got like a station that's down sitting, and then I've got one that's up here, and then you can take and you can walk. Don't keep sitting. Get up every half an hour, at least, you know, 40 minutes, and move around. Even in the dars. I stop the dars, and I tell the students, I tell them, keep somebody that's going to stop the dars. So we get up and do a few calisthenics or something and get the blood moving, and it will really have a huge impact. Otherwise, you're sitting, as we said, they're telling us now that sitting is killing more than anything, you know, because everything is just breaking down. So anyway, so you can come up with your own plan for that. You know, people who know can help you out, but it's necessary. And I'll tell you what, if it sounds overwhelming, just walk for half an hour, 40 minutes, or an hour every day. Brisk walk. That's going to be more than sufficient. Do some little bit of calisthenics, do some push-ups, do some whatever, you know, and it's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. It's going to have a huge impact, right? And coupled with all the other aspects and dimensions that we're going to hear a little bit about. So next thing that we'll touch a little bit on, how much time do we have?
30 minutes.
Huh? 30 minutes? We have 30 minutes? Oh yeah, okay, good. So hunger and nourishment. If you notice, we talked about exercise before diet. Usually people, health, oh, it's what you eat. Well, yeah, there is a heavy impact, but exercise, movement is more impactful. Therefore, you'll find people eating junk, but they're physically active. They're better off than the people eating everything out of Whole Foods and they're inactive. Really. You know, in Pakistan, we have these, the laborers, Pathan log, you know? These guys, they eat, if you see what they eat, you'd wonder how they're still alive. But they are active. They work like, subhanAllah, you know? They are super active, and these guys have flat stomachs, they're in good shape, you'll never find them obese, and they're fine. People are dropping out with this COVID, these guys they're fine, you know? Because they're highly active. There's other, you know, other factors, but that is, I'm sure, you know, a very, you know, important factor. So, hunger and nourishment. And we start out with hunger, by the way. Does anybody have an inclination as to why we would mention hunger before nourishment? Eat this, eat that, eat this, eat that. The default mode of the human is eating or being hungry. Well, we failed to realize that, right? It's snack, non-stop snack, you know, snacking, you know. Eat this, eat that, drink this, drink that, you know, it's non-stop. And as we mentioned, this is probably the most, you know, important reason why we have such a huge, you know, incidence of diabetes, because there's no stop in this glucose flowing around in the body that can't be used, and ultimately it just shuts down. So actually, we should remain hungry as much as possible, and we should eat according to the necessity. Ibn Qayyim is also going to tell us an amazing concept, and I'm sure you would not find anything that even touches this wisdom, you know, from all the health gurus today. So now you see your work is cut out, right? Why is it doing this? He has to fix my laptop, but then make dua that he actually does that. Okay, so Quran, Sunnah, Aqwal al-Ulama, hunger in the Quran. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyam kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum. Being hungry has been prescribed. It's a must. You have to do it. Why? Because it's good for you. Allah doesn't need our hunger. We need it. We need it. And not only the primary reason is being hungry, it controls, we learn control of our nafs, our desires. It also creates a vacuum of physical input and material input, and we become more connected to the divine and the spiritual. Therefore, we always find the hungrier we are, the more spiritually inclined we feel. Before Asr, or before Maghrib in Ramadan, everybody's, you know, in dua and crying and dhikr and tilawat, and then Allahu Akbar, and iftar, and what iftar we usually have. Now just look at the condition at Maghrib. What was the condition in Asr? And now what's the condition in Maghrib? And in Ramadan we try and, you know, understand what's going on. And so therefore, again, if we follow the prophetic tradition, we won't have that dilemma. What's happening is so we have to make up for what we lost all day, right? Wrong. The whole idea, what we gained all day long, we have to maintain that. So we follow the prophetic example, a few dates, which is the best possible thing we could put in our system at that point in time. The system is now, just like my computer, it's gone into sleep mode. Exactly, really. Your system now for 15, 16, 18 hours is now, your whole digestive system is now in sleep mode. And it's in detox mode. And if we could see what's going on, you know, even physiologically, it's just amazing. Now, to bring, just like this computer, we touch it gently and it comes out. So Nabi Alayhi Salatu showed us the method. A few dates, which is dissolved immediately, and it's 80% natural, high quality glucose, which goes directly into the bloodstream. It gives us vitality without all that heaviness, and it's digested easily. We're not burping and, weaving back and forth in salat and, one is getting over with it. We're enjoying our Maghrib salat, in fact. And then, after coming out of this sleep mode, so now our digestive system has kicked in. We've offered our salat, our nawafil, adhkar, and now maybe a half an hour, 40 minutes later, we have a good, balanced, wholesome meal as fuel to give us strength, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, for a night of ibadah and for the next day of fasting. And we continue with that for 30 days. This brings about a total transformation of the human being. And that's what it is. But because we don't follow the etiquettes and we don't follow the prophetic example, it backfires. We have people, many people now, they're gaining weight in Ramadan. How is that? Because we've just turned it upside down. Rather than, we just change the times of eating. And moreover, when we do eat, we've increased it double or triple fold. This is not going to give us the effect, neither spiritually, neither physically. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it prescribed fasting, and it has immense benefits for us if we'll only observe it as it should be observed. Okay? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, so that we can acquire taqwa. So fasting, the ultimate objective is the acquisition of taqwa. Why? To acquire taqwa. So again, let's look at Ibn Qayyim. I just tried to summarize this as short as I could and try and keep the gist and the substance of what I have to say. So he says, fasting has an amazing effect in protecting the outer limbs and the inner strength and defending them against corrupt and detrimental matter that, if overpowers them, ruins them. Because we're eating all this stuff, and if we don't clean our systems of it, it will ultimately destroy us, both physically and spiritually as well. And he's going to explain that. It also empties bad elements, waste that prevent their health. So all of these limbs, all of these detrimental elements, so it relieves, it detoxes, it rids the body of all of these things. Fasting protects the health of the heart, the limbs, and rejuvenates them from what, this is amazing, he says, the hands of passion and desire have stripped them from. In other words, by following our desires and wants, and I want this and I want that, and following, this beast of our passions, we have stripped ourselves from our spirituality, from our connection with the divine. Because either you're connecting with above or you're connecting to below. So if we're going to, connect to the below, our desires, it's going to strip us from our connection with above. And so fasting is repairing that damaged relationship. Okay? So it rejuvenates them, these limbs, from what the hands of passion and desire have stripped them from, because we're using these limbs in the disobedience of Allah. Fasting is helping us to use them in His obedience. So it's therefore the greatest facilitator of taqwa. It's a very summary. He's got really, if anyone knows Arabic, or I think probably there's English translations, read this. It's just unbelievable. And it really, it's iman building to read these things. So, this is an amazing hadith. This is in Tabrani. It's not in Bukhari and Muslim, but it is nevertheless a substantial and recognized hadith. And it's a long hadith, and in it is Sumu tasihu. Fast and become healthy. Now, I'll just tell you a little story, and this story I heard from the person himself. He was a very great alim. He passed away a long time ago, but he was from Hyderabad, Deccan, from India. His name was Sheikh Jamil Ahmed. He was also a very spiritual person, very learned man. And he was also a prolific person in the field of dawah. So he was in a jamaat, this Tabligh jamaat, right? So he was in a jamaat that was going from India to Australia back in maybe the 1960s or 70s or something like that. So after they were in the airplane, he started, spitting up blood. And it really got serious, And so when they got to probably halfway, either Malaysia or Indonesia, I forgot the place. So it was really serious, and so they took him off the plane and through emergency, brought him to the emergency, and they found out that his lungs are full of blood because he's in last stages of tuberculosis. He was unaware of it. So now what? So either it's over, it's unlikely that he's going to live, and even if he does, he's going to be in the hospital for a good little while, right? So now, what does the rest of the Jamaat do? Do they carry on, or they wait for him, or what do they do? So they make a mashwara, they just consult, and they, okay, well, anyway, it's in the hands of Allah, so we need to carry on our mission, we'll go, and in the meantime, he's in good hands, he's here in the hospital, let him, if he passes on, then he goes to Allah's rahmat, and if he gets health, we'll pick him up on the way back. Sounds like a good plan. Reasonable, at least. So they go to him and they tell him, and he's the senior, he's a very great alim, and he's the eldest, and so they tell him, okay, this is the mashwara we have, and this is what we plan to do. How would he got furious. He had nothing doing. You carry me along with, I'm in the path of Allah, I'm going, and if I die, then do with me as they did with Abu Ayyub al-Ansari. He was also he was in his 90s. In the foot of Constantinople, in Istanbul, Turkey, and then he's buried there. So he said, if I die on the way, which is what happened, he actually died on the way, carry my dead body because I want to be able to say, oh Allah, what did you do? I went in your path, living and dying. My dead body even went in and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered his doing. He's buried there in Turkey. Probably many of you might have seen that. So he said, I want to follow that example. So they couldn't actually, he was so senior, they couldn't say no. So somehow they actually took him. Now, he quoted this hadith because he was a great, he said, and you know what? And it was Ramadan. And also, I'm going to fast. Come on. No, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, Sumu tasihhu. With yaqeen on that, I'm going to also fast. Even though a person is sick, already has an excuse. And he's traveling, double excuse. No, I'm going to bank on this hadith. Another part of this hadith is safiru tasihu, which is amazing. But people who travel a lot, they know this, particularly those who travel, to increase their knowledge, and I think which is what the travel used to be for Muslims, particularly the scholars, that travel and gain health. So he said, I'm traveling and I'm fasting with yaqeen. And you know what? When they got to Australia, he was fine. He walked off the plane fine. They took him to the emergency, took an x-ray, his lungs were clear. Now you might believe that or not. I heard this from the man. I spent a month with the man, and he's not the type that's going to come up with stories out of the air. And ليس على الله بعزيز فإنه على كل شيء قدير ومن يتوكل على الله فهو حسبه. Who depends on Allah is enough. But our belief is in pills and potions, and he said and she said, but if our yaqeen is on Allah and His Rasul and what He has instructed, then see the power of it. So this is a very powerful thing. So this tells us that fasting is not only spiritually, and that's the main objective, it has health benefits unlimited, Allah may grant us all those benefits. Fast and become healthy. Okay, absence of hunger can cause of most deaths today. You might, what? Yeah, people are not dying of hunger. It's very hard to die of hunger. Dr. Saab, you can correct me. It will take you months without food to die. You're not going to die tomorrow. Mothers used to say, he didn't eat today. You're going to die of starvation. Eat. So he's all right. The child doesn't want to eat because actually his body is telling him, don't eat. Generally, that's what it is. And we're going to force. And so you're not going to die of starvation. That's pretty hard to do. There are people dying, but it takes a long time. People are dying from overeating. We're dying from the opposite. Hunger increases vitality, energy, brain power, memory. You find our ulama, subhanallah, how did they get these memories? Obviously it was taqwa was the main ingredient, but they were, Imam Bukhari radiallahu anhu, Amir al-Mu'mineen fil Hadith, he was known to eat very little and very simple. If you read about what he used to eat, how did the man remain alive? Okay, we're not telling you to go to those extremes. He had ultimately, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's special assistance with him, of course. But boosts spiritual awareness and closeness to Allah. We talked about that. And every one of us has experienced this in Ramadan, I think, to some extent or another. So be intelligent. Hunger renders food more delicious. I'm sick. I don't want to see any more food. Right? Why? Because you're full. When you're hungry, everything tastes wonderful. One of the Mashaykh, he says, it's the best sauce to put on your food, hunger. Forget ketchup and mustard and all that jazz. Be hungry and you'll just relish your food. Be intelligent, adopt means of health before illness. So this is another thing, visceral fat, main cause of many. This is the fat that's around the stomach. So it's not actually just around your stomach, it's all around your vital organs. So it's causing, particularly people of South Asia, for some reason or another, genetically even, they are more prone to this, and it's very dangerous. So it causes all these problems. It can be a cause for all of these diabetes, heart disease, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's serious. So we need to keep it down. So excessive body fat linked to 25 to 50% of frequent cancer types. Okay? West's main health issue is chronic inflammation from over and wrong eating. It's not COVID, it's not this, it's more than anything, it's wrong and overeating. Health food is junk food when you're full. Sheikh Noor, he says that. Health food is junk food when you're full. Because you're full, you don't eat anything more. The Arabs have this expression, they say, at-ta'am al-ta'am da. Eating after eating is sickness. Just look for some kind of problem. And that's what we do all day long. Allah help us. Breakfast type created by breakfast food manufacturers. This is controversial perhaps, but traditional people didn't eat 3 times a day, by the way. There's a riwayat, albeit it's kind of a weak riwayat, but Aisha Radhan says the first bid'ah that we'll see in the ummah is they eat twice a day. In other words, my mashayikh in Makkah, who saw the days of poverty, they said if we've got food in the morning, forget about even thinking about food in the night, because it's impossible. I mean, it's not happening. And if you got food in the night, then, okay, when's that? They weren't worried about it. That wasn't their concern. They used to eat, and you see the traditional peoples, they go out in the field, they work, they farm, they come back around 10, 11, they have a kind of a brunch kind of a thing. Then they'll go back out in the field, they'll work, and, they'll be and then in the night they'll have something like after Maghrib. So maybe once or twice a day they'll eat, 3 times, 4 times, plus a snack, plus a tea, we're just inviting trouble. Plus we're not even burning it up. We're not active. There's no reason why we're eating all that except, this unsatiable nafs, which has a bottomless pit. So, okay. Here's one last thing, and then we will have to wind up, I suppose. So this is one very important thing, and I think this will kind of summarize the whole thing on eating. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُلُوا مِمَّا فِي الْأَرْضِ حَلَالًا طَيِّبًا وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ مُّبِينٌ. O mankind, eat which is lawful and wholesome. Halalan tayyiban. Now, a lot of people might think that halal tayyib is the same thing, right? No. Why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say halal and then say tayyib? If tayyib means halal. Tayyib means good, delicious, wholesome, beneficial. So as we're talking today, halal is, of course, that is the criteria, the minimum standard. It has to be halal. Otherwise there's no leeway here. But tayyib, this is another dimension. Is it wholesome? Is it beneficial? And beneficial, wholesome things are also delicious. هذا شيء طيب. That's wonderful, that's pleasing, that's delicious. And some things are. You know, our children, they all complain, they don't like vegetables, they don't like fruits, they want to eat potato chips, and they want to eat cookies. Actually, because the taste buds have been corrupted, salt and sugar, it becomes a craving. It actually stimulates portions of the brain the same way that heroin does. It's addictive. And so all of these manufacturers, they just pour it full of sugar and salt, and then these kids get addicted to that. They don't find good stuff tasty anymore. Now you take a child and prevent him from eating any of that stuff, period, and just give him vegetables, give him fruits. You'll see he'll be inclined towards those things. I've seen this myself. So halal and tayyiban. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, kulu. Kulu means eat. And it doesn't mean just eat, it means you are ordered to eat. This is fi'l al-amr. This is an order. Kulu. Therefore, if we're asked, why do we eat and drink? Because Allah ordered us. Generally said because that's how we get our strength. Actually, Allah gives you strength, but He gives it through the food and drink, generally, not necessarily. People eat and drink and they get fatigue syndrome. People don't eat and drink like Bukhari, and they do what, people eating tons and never go far. So we eat and drink because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordered us to. And along with the order of eating and drinking, a third order is there. Kulu washrabu wala tusrifu. Eat, drink, do not go into excesses. And Ibn Qayyim, again, if we had time, but the khulasa of what he says is that eating and drinking is the order of Allah to replenish supplies of energy which have been used. You fill up your tank of your car to the extent that it has burned up the fuel, right? If you overfill the tank, what happens? It's going to flow out and might even catch fire and destroy the vehicle. So we are to eat and drink to the extent that we replenish the energy that has been used. If we go above that, we're going to get into problems, major problems. And if we don't replenish it, then that's also going to be a problem as well. Okay? So halal, tayyib, eat, drink, and don't observe excesses. And it's not one size fits all. Somebody has a high metabolism, a low metabolism, somebody's very active, somebody's inactive. There's different strokes for different folks. It's not, So, but everyone knows, there's a very important hadith in this regard that, and probably you might have heard that, 1/3 of the stomach for food, 1/3 for drink, 1/3 for air. So do we have a meter there that, okay, 1/3, and we have an app for that's gonna, probably somebody's gonna come up with something like that. But, so you don't need that. It's not, exacting. It means that, a moderate amount of food before, and if you're eating until you feel full, you've gone way past because you don't really feel full until after a period of time. It has to connect in your brain, which takes some time. There's a lag in that. So if we're going to eat to our full, then we've gone over the limit. Drinking in the same way. So we'll eat moderately, and we all know what that is, and if we just think about it and feel ourselves, we'll come to a good medium. So eating and drinking, and then not excessive, not in quantity, and not in amounts of time that we eat. And we don't make our objective. We eat to live, not live to eat. This is what I observe in Pakistan. It's basically mazai. This is very tasty. In other words, we're eating to taste good stuff. Okay, that's fine. It can taste good, but that's not the point. And as a result, it's just what tastes better and better. It doesn't matter what it's doing to us. It's just if we feel that it tastes. No, it's about we eat to live. And then, in other words, we consider our eating and drinking as a fuel for righteous action. So our whole intention changes. Our intention changes, and then our habits change, and then our practices change. And then our eating and drinking, rather than being just a gluttonous filling of the lower desires, it becomes an act of worship. Kulu, it's an order of Allah. So I'm going to eat. Washrabu, I'm going to drink. In fact, marriage, procreation, all of these things which are the heights of human pleasure can actually be acts of worship with the proper intention, following Sharia, and observance of Sunnah. They become acts of worship. And this was the whole theme of this whole journey, and we started from this and we'll end with that. It's all about understanding that we are slaves of Allah and we have the most merciful master, that He has made His obedience pleasureful. Allah bi dhikrillahi tatminna al-qulub. To remember Allah is the only thing that's going to give you real peace and satisfaction, in this world, and it's the means of our felicity in the next world. So it's all about becoming the grateful slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and recognizing the beneficence of our master and getting close to him. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us all, particularly me, I'm saying a lot, and I'm probably the farthest away of anyone, but I feel if I keep on talking, if I keep on inviting, it's where وَذَكِّرْ فِإِنَّ الذِّكْرَ تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. To make a reminder, it will help the people of Iman. The person who's saying, the people who are hearing. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all tawfiq, that whatever we've heard of good things, of good directives, of good objectives, that He let us understand and give us the tawfiq to implement and be examples for the rest of the hungry, thirsty, deprived world. Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. We are the best of people who have been sent forth for the benefit of all humanity. And if we'll embody all of these beautiful ideals, then we will actually be that best ummah. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us all among them, in the best possible way. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المؤمنين سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك. If there is any time, if there's any questions, otherwise. Yeah. I'm saying the floor is open for questions. I don't say I have answers. Probably I don't, but you're free to ask. If I have something to say, I'll say that. Otherwise, be honest and say I don't know. Yeah. What's that?
You mentioned how healthy food on a full stomach is like junk food. What do you do in a situation when you're full but there's still food on your plate?
Good question. Did you understand the question? And yeah, that's a dilemma. So he's saying, so you're full, but there's still food left on the plate. Don't leave anything for shaitan, right? So maybe we can delegate. That's use our managerial. They're teaching us, these skills. So delegate, and if it's a lot, then obviously you don't want to, do that. But if it's a little bit, then go ahead and deal with it. If it's not going to put a hurt on you. Use your imagination and your intuition and your intelligent young man. I'm sure you'll come up with a good solution for that, inshallah. Yeah. But yeah, we definitely don't want to waste things. One of the things, just in having said that, operationally, one of the things that happens, this happens a lot in Ramadan. Don't you see that, you've all seen this, right? After this iftari, all this stuff is left over. So we really need to think about portions. Rather than throwing all this stuff out in front of everybody that we know people are not going to eat. And then it's not like we're in a country where people are, looking for anything to eat, something's been put on the table and it's been lifted off and that's used. I don't want, So let us be careful in the portions that we, my father used to say, take all you want, but eat all you take. Another thing he used to say, you're leaving this food on your plate, people are starving in India. He never saw India. Still hasn't seen India, never will. But people from India are wasting the food and they're seeing starving people, right? So we don't want to do that, right? And one of the big wastes that happens that's really terrible is we cut up all this fruit, right? The Arabs, and we also see that Zuleikha, radiallahu anha, when she, with the story of Yusuf, she gave all the ladies a muttaka. She gave them the fruits with a knife. So what does that mean? The Arab custom also is you give your guests a plate of fruit with a knife. Whatever you want, cut it up, eat it, and you're not going to mess up the whole plate, right? So this is the way to do it. So give people knives, give them the whole fruit, what they cut up and they eat, fine. But not, it's not going to go to waste. So if we'll think about that, if we're concerned about that, then we're going to come up with solutions to remedy a lot of that. But this waste thing is terrible. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't like musrifin. This is part of israf. And even in water, we talk about this in other modules. But yes, wonderful question. Anything else? Jazakumullah khair, barakallahu feekum. So hopefully, inshallah, this won't be our last encounter. Hopefully we'll meet from time to time, and inshallah we'll have more chances to exchange beneficial information. Yeah?
This is not relevant to today's topic, but I was just reading your biography and was wondering that you born and raised here,
Yeah.
but you ended up having a degree from the Jamshoro Sindh. How that?
That's pretty interesting, huh? Well, because actually after I studied in Makkah, then I was deputed to Pakistan as a teacher in 1985. And at that time I had this, I was inclined to, I would have actually completed graduate studies in Makkah, but for various reasons, we didn't want to stay there. We wanted to move on to Pakistan. We had good opportunities over there. So we went. And so with the idea that at that time I was interested in doing a PhD, which didn't, so that was a step in that direction. And that was close by. And actually, I didn't have to do anything except sit in the examination, because whatever things I was being tested in, I was teaching all those things already. So it wasn't really a big deal. But the PhD part never. I just read about a Pakistani guy, by the way, who was 80 years old, and he just now got his PhD. So it's never too late to learn. Last year, or a couple of years ago, I was conducted a completion of the lessons of Bukhari, which was the first one in the IOK Institute, which now I'm teaching there full time. But the first graduating class, and for the ladies particularly, this is inspirational. One of the students graduating was a woman in her 70s in a wheelchair. And another woman who was in the class was a professional lawyer in practice. She was practicing, and she went through that whole course in Subhanallah. So where there's a will, there's a way. So does that answer your question? It was a taqdeer of Allah, and anyway, that happened. Yeah. Anything else? Okay. Yeah.
Did you ever eat karai
Karai
gosht near
gosht. Yes, I've eaten karai gosht, yeah. Are you from Karachi? From Hyderabad? Yes, so Hyderabad, so you know that's where the Jamshoro is next to that. Yes, I've eaten karai. Actually, that's not a bad thing. If you would use a good desi ghee, usually they use some really nasty, this vegetable oil, which is really not good for you at all. But if they would use coconut oil or olive oil or best desi ghee, the clarified butter, this is the best thing to cook in, actually. And that whole concept of cholesterol coming from the saturated, that's a whole debunked thing. We don't have time for that, but generally we talk about that as well. So yeah, karai can be healthy. Make sure that the meat is halal, obviously, and it's free range, organically raised, and that's fine. All the other stuff is great stuff. You got ginger, you've got garlic, you've got tomatoes, and it's good stuff. Just use good quality oil, and you're fine, inshallah. Don't overdo it though. Once a week, it's okay. Inshallah. Anything else? سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد ان لا اله الا انت نستغفرك ونتوب اليك. جزاكم الله خير. بارك الله فيكم. والسلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Jazakallah khair, Sheikh Hashim Ahmed. And definitely we'll have more programs with you, inshallah. And actually, last 2 hours I have seen that everybody was sitting quietly and listening. And just for you, next time when you come, you should bring Sheikh Shulman. Okay, inshallah.
Okay.
And I think you speak Urdu also, right?
What about?
Yeah. And because
35 years in Pakistan should speak some.
And for people who are there from from 2008 or 9, Sheikh Suleiman, his son was here with us for almost more than 1 or 2 years. He was a teacher at Madrasa as well as at Folsom Prison School. So he's father of Sheikh Suleiman is his son. Inshallah, next time we'll invite him also, and both
Very
together,
good.
inshallah. Jazakallah khair for your time and energy, and may Allah bless you. Assalamu alaikum. The food will be ready after the immediate food is ready with the boxes. Inshallah, let's pray Isha and then you can have dinner together. Inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
What time?
Isha is at 8.